Good morning. Perhaps the most important story today in all newspapers, including Financial Express, in terms of India's ability to ever compete with China, is an offering by TeamLease Services, which is India's largest temping firm. And this is a story which doesn't even mention China's name. Essentially what TeamLease does, a new division of TeamLease called TeamLease Compliance, what this study does is, it looks at all the compliances that India Inc. needs to deal with, whether it's labor or whether it's some other aspect of factory regulation. It looks at all these compliances and finds that contrary to the claims made in terms of ease of doing business, India is still a very, very difficult place to do business. Just to cite one number, in the case of labor, for example, TeamLease found that there were 463 acts that a company has to deal with, 32,542 compliances, and 3,048 annual filings is something that a company needs to do. In fact, in the case of one automobile client of TeamLease, it found that the company had to deal with 100 acts of the government, 4,500 annual compliances. An FMCG firm had to deal with 6,700 compliances. And we haven't even come yet to the unfriendly policies in the case of telecom and things like that. So the question remains, how is India ever going to be able to compete with China? And if it can't compete with China, how is it going to be able to put all kinds of restrictions on China? If it can't compete with China, how will its GDP grow to that level? If its GDP doesn't grow, its military expenditure cannot grow. So this is actually a very, very critical chart that everybody in Niti Aayog and the Prime Minister's office needs to be looking at here. While on China, we have an interesting story which basically says that there are just around 4 Chinese firms which are working on about 1,000 kilometers of highway projects in India. So essentially, while Mr. Gadkari's plan or his statement yesterday that no Chinese firms will be allowed to build highways in India, while that's an important statement, the impact on the ground is probably going to be quite limited. An important corporate story is that the CBI has booked the head of the GVK group, his son, and many others in a 700 plus crore scam pertaining to the Mumbai International Airport. Essentially what the CBI is saying is that they were fake contracts which were generated for about 300 to 400 crore rupees, and some of the revenue of Mumbai Airport was understated. Essentially all of this allowed the GVK group to give less of the revenue share to the government of India. So let's see how this investigation pans out. The railways have just entered into a brand new phase of PPP. Railway Minister Piyush Goyal just announced that 109 pairs of trains would now be allowed, would be thrown open to the private sector. So let's say if you want to go from Delhi to Kathgodam, you can actually go in a private sector train. So that's a very big improvement. Up till now, there was non-railway participation. There are about 3 trains that were run by non-railway companies, but they were essentially run by IRCTC, which is a railway subsidiary. So you didn't really have private sector participation till now. That is what Mr. Goyal has now introduced. So that's a very big step forward. What our editorial talks about today is that while the move is very welcome, there are certain critical steps that need to be followed if this move is to actually fructify and big investments are to come in. Right now what's happened is that because you don't have a railway regulator, the levers of power still remain with the railway. So if you've got inordinate power with the railway, this is going to keep investors away. I'll give you an example. So if you take, let's say, some sector in which the private sector is running a train, and let's say they price a ticket at 1,000 rupees. Now the rules allow the railways on these very same routes to start their own trains as long as there's a gap of 1 hour between what the private sector was offering. So let's say if there's a train leaving at 10 o'clock at night from the private sector, the railways can then run a train at 9 o'clock at night or after 11 at night. Now the railway subsidies, as we've talked about before, railway subsidies are essentially equal to the railway revenues from passenger, which means that if the railways earn 100 rupees from passenger revenues, they also give a subsidy of 100 rupees. So the actual passenger cost should have been 200 rupees. So now here's the story that we're talking about. And so if a private sector train offers you a seat at 1,000 rupees, an hour before that or an after hour that, theoretically, the railways can start another train where the ticket is priced at 500 rupees. So there's a lot of fear of predatory pricing that is real, which investors will look at, and this is not an imaginary fear. In the 2000s, the Vajpayee government had opened up the oil sector to private sector companies. So Reliance and Essar set up petrol pumps across the country. But since the subsidy on petrol and diesel, which was offered by the public sector companies like IOC, BPCL and HPCL, since that subsidy was not removed, essentially people across the country remained and they kept buying fuel from IOC, BPCL and HPCL. So as a result of which, within a few years, very big investments made by Reliance and Essar Retail went, completely went down the drain, because these companies had to mothball their retail outlets. There's still time yet. What the railways need to do is to quickly come up with a regulator which is genuinely independent. Right now, the problem with the proposal of the regulator is that the regulator has very limited powers, and by and large, the regulator has got to be selected by officials from the railway ministry itself. So this is not a genuinely independent regulator. So if this move of getting in more PPP by Mr. Piyush Goyal, which is a very welcome move, if that move has to work, then the railways just have to bring in a regulator as quickly as possible, a truly independent regulator as quickly as possible. Our lead article by TV Mohandas Pai not only welcomes the banning of Chinese apps, it essentially explains the context in which these Chinese apps were able to develop so fast. Mohandas Pai talks about two things. He says, one, the ability of the Chinese government to ban most big global tech giants from abroad, people like Google, allowed the Chinese companies the space to develop on their own. So this is a very big factor. He's not recommending that India do this, but he's just pointing this out. Another factor which played a big role in allowing Chinese apps to develop was the fact that they had a lot of access to cheap capital. Now, capital is critical when it comes to developing, local apps. But as Mohandas Pai talks about the fact that the Indian government has all manner of irrational curbs on the ability of Indian apps or Indian developers to be able to raise money. The angel tax is a very good example of this. So what Mohandas Pai says, apart from fixing policies like this, the government of India needs to be spending a lot more money in public-private research. So read the article, it's full of good ideas. I don't want to spoil it for you. I just want to end with one concluding statement that fortunately for us, India is so far behind in sectors like education or health. And a lot of these apps, if there are apps on education and health, they give India a strong possibility of being able to leapfrog and make up the gap here. So if the government is really interested in promoting apps, and it is able to promote apps or take the help of apps in these sectors, the government can give a big fillip to the app development industry in the country. Thank you. Have a great day.